It's the 5th day of April, 2015, and this is the Radical Agnostic. My name's John. My co-host, as always, is Mark.
Hello.
And we couldn't get a guest today because it's Easter, and even our atheist friends were celebrating some form of Festivus. So I begin today with a Taoist fable. A Taoist monk was walking through a bamboo forest, deep in thought, when all of a sudden, out jumped a man-eating tiger. The tiger started chasing the monk, and the monk started running for his life, fearful that any second the beast would catch him and eat him. He came to a cliff, and as he ran away, he fell off the cliff, grabbed onto a single vine that was growing out of the side. With one hand, he held on. The vine had thorns in it, and they dug into his hand. Just as he was about to fall, he looked down, and he saw another tiger below him, waiting for him to fall. And it was at that moment that he saw a single blackberry growing from the vine. And he ate it, and it was the best damn berry he'd ever eaten. And that's it. The meaning of the fable is the tiger behind him is the past. The tiger below him is the future, both of which are terrifying. And even though the moment can be painful as he hangs from that thorny vine, well, the present bears delicious fruit. What do you think of that, Mark?
It's good.
I got that from an arm wrestling documentary.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. The Russian challenger to the great John Brzezinski said that fable, and somehow it was meaningful to him. You should watch it. It's called Pulling John. One of the best documentaries I've seen, and it's all about professional arm wrestling.
Yes. Is that a recent thing, or?
It came out about 5 years ago. Yeah, you can watch it for free on YouTube. So I've been about a month ago, I started bragging to everybody that I haven't been sick in 3 years. And when I would say this, people would fear for me and knock on wood for me. Like a guy just knocked on wood when I said that. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, well, yeah, I'm tempting fate, but I really don't believe in karma or anything sort of like that. So I decided to just double down and tell everyone. I mean, I told you last week when you came here, I was asking you if you had been sick lately. Right. Because everyone's sick in Tucson right now, it seems like. And sure enough, I have some kind of flu or something. I'm kind of hoping it makes my voice more radio-friendly.
Maybe it's psychosomatic.
Yeah, but that's confusing. Where did it come from then? My confidence in my
Maybe subconsciously you want to teach yourself a lesson. I don't know.
Oh, man. There's too many layers, man. You could never get away from it. I thought my overabundant confidence would keep me well.
No.
It didn't work. But actually, I don't consider it sickness unless you miss a day of work because of it. So right. If I can't write papers tomorrow, then I'm sick. I would have liked. I mean, I really feel it's like that flu where everything hurts, where you touch your skin and it hurts in your head. I would have liked to record this from bed, but Mark always steals the covers. So.
Yeah.
One thing to all my listeners, man, I want you guys to send in comments or questions. Right now, you have to use Facebook, so just look up John J. Berger on Facebook, and I'll be your friend if I'm not already, and send questions or comments on the show, and then we'll read them on the show, and it should be good for a laugh or even a serious discussion. So the things I say that you don't agree with, let me know, and it could add some fun to the show. So Mark, you've been coming under fire a little bit on Facebook lately for being a misanthrope.
Yeah.
What exactly happened?
Well, it's funny because it was April Fool's Day, which, it can be a fun day, but on the internet it's already April Fool's Day every day. Like somebody's posting some crap that
It's fake.
is fake, but they think is real, or they're posting it that's fake and they know it's fake, and other people think it's real, or
Right.
I don't know. So I did some silly thing about a band, saying that I finally had heard some song by this band.
It was the Radiohead.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and now I just completely understood it. And I don't hate Radiohead. The only song that I ever heard by them that I liked was the first song,
Creep.
The Creep. And I actually bought that record and listened to it, and I didn't care for it at all. I was like, oh, that song's cool, and now I don't want to hear that song ever again in my life.
I'm a huge Radiohead fan, and I don't ever want to hear that song. That
Right.
whole album, Pablo Honey, is by far their worst.
Right, and so people have played me other stuff later, and I'm like, yeah, it's just not for me, So because they're a popular band, I chose them for no other reason. Like I said, I don't hate them.
Right.
But I was just like, oh, I finally, heard this song, and I completely understand it now, and it's like the heavens opened up and blah, blah, blah. But then for some reason, someone, and I'm not really sure, I don't really know how Facebook works, but somehow someone that I'm friends with, someone that they're friends with, saw it.
A secondary friend.
Right. And then they decided that they really needed to send me a message. And so they wrote this message saying, every time I see your posts, which I guess they're seeing my posts a lot, sorry about that.
Which is
I'd
odd, yeah.
block you if I could, but you're not my friend, so.
Yeah, they seem to know a lot of, they're sick of you.
Right, they're sick of me. I'm and basically they told me that I was trying to be edgy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, and I just replied and said, all right, well, I'm glad you know me really well by the posts that you've seen that I've put on the internet. And basically, it's fine for them to think that. I don't care.
Right.
But anything that I put on the internet in general, I don't take really seriously.
So they're wrong. They're wrong about the accusation that you get off on disliking and making fun of things that most or many other people like.
Yeah, I don't really get off on it.
Is it part of your identity, though? Because I would say for me that it is. Like we talked last week about creationism, and I admitted that part of that was, wow, I get to have a belief that I can research and have all these answers to that goes completely against everything we know.
Right.
And that was exciting. There's the Flat Earth Society today. There's people who really believe and will argue that the Earth is flat. So I am kind of like that, but I've tried to make it so that the pursuit of truth would balance out my need to be different. In other words, I won't believe things that are different that are
just to be different.
You're right. So what about you?
Well, I'm like that pretty much too. But in the case that I like to argue, but I don't like to argue just for argument's sake. I like to argue because I like to get different points across and hear different thoughts of other people and ideas, and so I like that kind of thing instead of just everyone sitting around going, "Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah," and agreeing with you. That's just kind of boring to me. So I mean, I get that. That's definitely part of my personality, and I'm also vocal about my opinions, and I'm vocal about my tastes. Now, if I say that I don't like a band, all that means is that I don't like that particular band. It doesn't mean that I think that people who like that band are stupid or have bad taste,
right,
or anything else.
I used to be that elitist guy, and my conclusion was that people liked pop music or really really popular music just because it was spoon fed to them. But then I found that I liked some pop songs,
right.
and there's a place for it. There's a time and place for pop music. It's
Definitely.
great for dancing and whatever, if you're just background or different things for different people.
Right.
But I used to have to develop a philosophical reason why they were wrong to like it and I was right to like my music. I used to have to develop an analytical model for that, and that is elitist and shitty.
Right. I don't think I ever took it that far, or by saying that I mean I don't think I thought about it that deeply.
Right.
But I used to definitely have similar beliefs and think that, what I liked was good, everyone else liked was crap, and that's why they liked it, because they're stupid, and
Well, like my buddy Dan says, I think he's into this similar music scene as you, but he was like, he insulted Pink Floyd for being a pop band. I'm like, come on, dude, like, how edgy do you need to be? Like, these are 8-minute songs with 2-minute guitar solos. They're not built for the radio. It's progressive music, and it's awesome. Pink Floyd rules. Like, not everyone has to like it, but it's not pop music just because it got popular. So there's a question for you. Do you like any famous bands?
Oh, I like tons of famous bands. Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Metallica.
Yeah.
Now Slayer. I mean, there's all kinds of like bands that are popular that I like. There's Beatles songs I like. There's Rolling Stones songs I like. There's, I might not necessarily want to pay $200 or even $50 to go see any of the bands.
No.
But yeah, there's all kinds of popular music I like. I like Ace of Base songs. I like some Pink songs. I like,
Yeah, there's a Pink song I liked, actually. It was playing in the gym, and I came home and asked Paula what this song was, and she's like, that's Pink. I was like, oh, Jesus. I like it.
So it was just funny, and so he takes his time out to, send this to me, and in the exchange, I think the last thing that he said to me was something about, well, he knew who I was and what kind of person I was, and I just was a terrible person, and in him knowing that, he felt a little bit better about himself. So I was like, okay, like, I'm sorry you don't like yourself. And if actually, if that makes him feel better, if him lashing out at me like that makes him feel better, go for it. Because it didn't, like I said, I'm talking about it now, but yeah, I can handle it. It's not ruining my day by any means. So
yeah, I mean, I just say less and less on Facebook. I mostly I'll say like harmless things, or if I think something's funny, like I came up with like an Onion headline the other day.
Yeah.
Or I posted that thing from the Gigantopithecus. Did you see that?
Yeah, I read that.
How awesome is that? I mean, this is just a recycle from Joe Rogan's podcast, so I want to say that right now. Listen to his if you want to hear this story more complete. But it's the Bigfoot existed. It's known to science to have existed. And not only that, but alongside Homo sapiens. So the youngest one ever found was 100,000 years old. And that was well within the time frame where our species, anatomically modern humans, existed.
Right.
The biggest gorilla that lives today, the Eastern Highland gorilla or something, it's about 350 pounds, 5'6". And that thing is huge and terrifying to us, right? This thing was 1,100 pounds and 10.5 feet tall.
Right.
I mean, the size of this is unbelievable. It was a primate, and it might have walked on 2 legs. It might have been bipedal, but even if it wasn't, obviously it could stand up. All apes can.
Right.
And just when you see that, the black and white picture, they don't really know what it looks like because all they have is about 1,000 teeth and a handful of mandibles. That's all they have. Which helps a lot of the Bigfoot skeptics always say, well, where are the fossils? Where are the bones? Well, where are the bones of this thing? We know it existed. And a lot of hunters and stuff, they'll tell you, I've never seen a skeleton of a black bear. Other animals eat bones, and they go away, So this thing is a real creature, Gigantopithecus, and they've never found a complete skeleton or even a rib or anything. That doesn't mean that Bigfoot exists, but he did at one point.
Well,
and the Native Americans have words for this thing, and they include them along with other real animals that they worshipped or had significance.
So they, saw it and remembered it, or some ancestors of theirs had it at one point.
Maybe. But the thing, I just can't, I don't think people get how terrifying this thing would be. I mean, 3 times the size of the biggest gorilla ever. I mean, you take the tallest human in the world, this thing is 3 feet taller and a lot thicker.
Right.
It could just literally pull your head off with this one hand without even thinking about it. This mainstream music question kind of goes into a kind of mini little one-line argument that you and I were having on Facebook recently, which was the distinction between, so we all agree, right, that politicians are pretty awful right now. Their behavior, their who they obey, you know, who pulls their strings, moneyed interests, in other words. Politicians are jerks, and where we divided was on the question of, are these evil people who are misrepresenting their constituency, or are they exactly what we deserve because we elected them? So my anger...
Well, that's not exactly what I was arguing.
Okay. Go ahead.
I posted this thing about... just about about people, and it was by a politician, Ron, who I think is a Republican. I think he's dumb in a lot of areas, but he had written supposedly something. This was attributed to him about saying that just because you don't agree with someone's opinion or their belief doesn't mean that you have to hate them, and you can be compassionate about people that you don't agree with and people that are, you know, and whatnot, and against what generally is the attitude of today, which is, and my point was that Republicans and Democrats act like, you know, World Wrestling Federation, screaming at each other, Republicans and Democrats, and it's, in my mind, it's kind of a big show. In my mind, I don't think they really hate each other as much as they pretend to.
Right.
And I think they, you know, are pretty buddy, and like they get on issues, they get what they actually want done by pretending to.
Well, it's a chess game. I mean, you can try as hard as you can to win, but you don't have to be angry at all at your opponent.
Right.
So they're trying to screw each other over, but they don't dislike each other, and it's not about ideology. It's just about them getting what they want.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that that isn't. The politicians today aren't who we deserve, because we have elected them, and we've always elected them, and they've always been basically a mirror of who we are as a society.
But you seem to be saying that they are influencing the public.
I mean, I don't think politicians were always that way. Maybe they were, because I wasn't around 50 years ago. But I don't think, and by that I mean that it seems to me like they worked together hand in hand a little bit more, or they at least weren't at each other's throats.
Well, I agree, actually, but that's not evidence for them influencing the public. In other words, the public could have been, 50 years ago, might not have been as partisan or as divided, and that now that they are more that way for some other reason, now the politicians are reflecting that in that change in the public.
That could be, except for my reasoning that the politicians began it and now it's trickled out into society, is that generally people that are talking about it, they want to toe the party line, and they want to say that they feel this way because they're a Republican or because they're a Democrat. And because they're a Democrat or they're a Republican, they think everybody on the other side is a complete idiot. And so that's why I think it's trickled down more. It's most people, when they're talking about the issues or whatever, they're not like, well, I think that, you know, this and blah, 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 because of even the Bible. Like, there's a very minimum amount of people that claim they believe something because it's in the Bible. I mean, they are there, but not as much as people that are claiming political parties.
Right. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I
haven't done. I don't know the statistics. But it just seems to me that way.
Evangelical
when people are talking.
Protestants. So the Catholic Church said that the Pope and the church hierarchy was the connection of man to God.
Right.
So the Protestant Church, when they split off, they replaced the authority of the Pope with the authority of the Bible. So the Bible became, the completely unadulterated word of God. And that's where biblical literalism came in.
Right.
So it's like everyone needs a touchstone from which that's an authority for them to claim. But yeah, I think in politics, that authority is the party line. And it's actually derived from TV pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
So this is why I think, I'm not sure this proves my point, but in the 50s, if you ask, our parents, you had like the Walter Cronkite days when there were 3 networks on TV, and you watched the 6 o'clock news, and it was very nonpartisan. There was no screaming or attacking the president every night or anything like that. It was just giving you the news, and it was very, like I said, nonpartisan and fair and balanced in a way. Now, they didn't report a lot. There was a lot of censorship, so they would never tell you about John F. Kennedy, getting a blowjob or whatever. But so it wasn't like free, great media, but it wasn't partisan. The reason for that was simple. It wasn't virtue. It was that you wanted to reach everybody. You wanted the whole country to watch your show. So you don't start espousing liberal values and then lose half your audience. You want to, or espousing conservative values and losing the rest of the country. So it made sense in that time with very few news sources to be in the middle, so you can get everyone to watch you and ratings go up. But with the rise of cable television in the 80s, everything changed. People now had options for the news. So they preferred sources. They started this trend of preferring sources that espoused the partisan views that people believed in. And so the demand, my belief is that it's supply and demand. So Fox News started in 1994 or 5 or 6, and MSNBC in the same year. And this was a response to market demand, if you ask me. People wanted a news station that didn't necessarily tell them lots of true things, but told them things that aligned with their political values and reinforced those values, because both of those news sources are so partisan. There was a demand in the public for partisan news, and it was given to them by Rupert Murdoch and whoever was behind MSNBC and other stations too.
See, I don't know if I'd agree with you, though. I don't know if there was a demand for partisan news. I know that it was given to people, and it's been popular, but I don't know if there was actually a demand for it. And the reason that I say that, too, is, so like on a bunch of issues, say abortion, I think if you talked to the majority of people in this country, they want some form of abortion to be legal. Majority of people do not want it completely made illegal.
That's true.
But when you watch Fox News or you talk to Republicans, for the most part, they want it completely illegal.
Right.
And so they're not representing the American public. And I think the American public on a lot of these issues, like the pipeline, like other stuff, they don't really have an opinion until the media tells them what to think.
Yeah,
and they learn what to think by watching their particular channel. That is enforcing their particular political party.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I agree with you that the partisan news stations make people more partisan, but I think they get there. I think they're willingly walking into that slaughterhouse. They know, because like when a natural disaster or like a terrorist attack happens, the ratings for CNN skyrocket. All these viewers of Fox News and MSNBC start watching CNN when something really important or really bad happens, because they trust it.
Right.
And then when that calms down and it's just normal times, they go back to Fox News and MSNBC, which demonstrates that they know that their preferred news source is not accurate. They know that it isn't the best for truth, subconsciously or on the surface of consciousness. So that feeds my opinion that you're right, that watching those stations makes you more partisan and gives you talking points on issues you wouldn't have an opinion on otherwise. But you go there to get that. You walk into that. It's like the Scientologists, if you watch that HBO thing. They're walking in. They're walking into. They want to be indoctrinated.
I completely agree with you about that. But my point is that, and they're just as complicit then in whatever's going on in this country. Like the electorate is just as complicit as the people who are elected. I'm not giving them any leeway and saying, "Oh, you guys are off the hook." But I do think that if you're going to go, which came first, the chicken or the egg, I think the politicians and in their behavior have allowed people in this society to go, oh, you can act like that. That's okay. You know, if our leaders, our elected officials are acting like this, it's okay for you to act like that and you to say stuff, you know, write letters to the editor with this venomous crap that you barely know about, and, you know, you're just flapping your gums, or even like in the grocery store, you know. But then at the same time, I think a lot of people aren't like that. Like they just give those opinions when like someone comes up and asks them, like a reporter or something.
Well, I think a lot of people are insecure. A lot of people don't care about current events in politics, and which is fine if you ask me. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But because our culture values people with opinions, which has definitely affected my behavior. I like to have opinions, obviously.
Right.
But some people don't have them, and they feel insecure about that because the culture demands that they do. And they see these other people expounding at the grocery store about the Keystone Pipeline as if they know all the ins and outs of it. And they sort of feel like, oh, I'm kind of dumb. I don't know the ins and outs of these issues. So they might tune into one of these stations to get a prepackaged opinion, and
right.
And they might not really even care all that much, and yet they'll sound really dogmatic or really extreme. I know that this is a strange fact. So, like, I wrote an essay about this. Every presidential election is pretty close. Okay, they're not necessarily extremely close, but they're pretty close. The Republican and the Democrat, the percentage difference in votes is usually no more than 3%. And that's odd to me because 40% of the U.S. population calls themselves conservative, and 20% calls themselves liberal. So then you have, 40% left over who don't identify as either one of those things.
Right.
Which tells me if you just had, why are the elections so close if the electorate is far more conservative than they are liberal? My conclusion was just that the media engineers close elections because they're extremely valuable for ratings. So in other words, you're going to start to hear Hillary is, of course, the far and away favorite for the Democratic candidate. It's almost statistically impossible that any other candidate will win the Democratic nomination. But you're going to start hearing, once that nomination game starts heating up over the next year, you're going to start hearing about this Democrat. Whoa, this guy's polls are way up. He's coming up to get Hillary. He might win. You're going to start hearing that, and they'll cycle through a few of them. We don't even know the names of these people that are running for the Democratic nomination, right. But we're going to. And that's a media. I mean, think about it. If you're running the news station, your story of the day can't be Hillary's still way ahead. It has to be something that's changed, and they will engineer that to be the case. And then when you get to the general election, the same thing is true. You keep hearing, whoa, this guy's coming up in the polls. But if you really read the polls, I've been able to predict the last three presidential elections 6 months before they happened. I correctly predicted them, and I correctly predicted the percentage that the guy would win by. And not because I'm a genius, but because I just read the polls. I look at them, and the answer is obvious.
But, and I agree with that, but don't you think that possibly the reason that the polls or elections are so close is because that 40% that is non-identified is basically probably liberal. They just don't want to call themselves liberal.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, I don't know. I think in today's society,
it's a bad word.
Liberal is more of a bad word than conservative.
It is a conservative country compared to other European or other
Right.
first world countries. The U.S. very conservative.
Well, and I just know most people that I know that are, say, independent vote, independent or other party than Democrat or Republican, they tend to have more left-leaning ideas.
The independents, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Independents, and just anyone that does not align with the Democrats.
I think there's a lot of socially liberal people who are fiscally conservative. So there's a lot of people who think gay marriage is okay, but they hate the way the Democrats, throw money around.
Throw money around, right? And I have to say I'm towards that too.
Yeah.
But I think that, like I said, a big part of that 40% that is not identified as liberal or conservative would, if it came down to it, be take liberal.
Well,
more than conservative.
What happens is that 40% gets split up at the general election because everyone gets told. So there's the same thing is true with the party bases. There's 32% of the population tells you that they're going to vote Republican no matter who the candidate is. 31% says they're going to do that for the Democratic candidate.
Right.
So that leaves you a huge 40%, or I can't count. Yeah, 40%, where their vote is up in the air. And they could turn the election. Those people could vote for a third-party candidate, and that guy could win. There's enough of them that's true. But the media wants to make it a two-party race because that's more, it's good versus evil.
Right.
It's more sexy. So they engineer it that way, and that whole 40% left over divides into Republican and Democrat voters every time because you don't want this guy to win, do you?
Right.
I know our candidate sucks.
Yeah. But also, that's just registered voters. There's the majority of people who could vote aren't registered and don't.
Right. That's true.
So if you actually if every election was actually determined by votes, then we'd basically not have a president. Because it'd be like none of the above.
If you needed a majority.
Yeah, none of the above. And so none of the candidates would get in, and it'd be an empty office. Because that's how much those candidates appeal to the majority of Americans.
This relates to other things, too. One of the things that really chaps my ass is the rise of these fake news websites. Okay, the quote-unquote satirical news. So The Onion, of course, is an example of news satire. Yeah. It's funny. It's obviously false. And most importantly, as I said, it's funny.
Right.
These other websites have now popped up over the last 5-6 years, and they just tell a lie. They tell a false news story. They say, it's aimed at liberals, for example. So it says Sarah Palin caught, in a gay black BDSM bar or something,
right?
And screaming out the N-word, just titillating things that could actually, and they're not always that extreme either, so they could be true,
right? So
people notoriously post these things thinking they're true,
right?
That to me is also a sign of demand. That is, I kind of feel like the market delivers what people want, and I don't think that they just started Fox News and then got the highest ratings for any 24-hour news station just because they threw it out there and people liked it. To me, it's all a response of demographic research and by these companies, and they say, what do people want? And they give it to them. So I used to get so angry about these fake news guys and and how horrible politicians are and shitty sitcoms, right? Stupid shows on TV, bad music, bad movies. It made me so mad that they were feeding, quote unquote, feeding that to us. Now the anger kind of faded away when I came to the conclusion that this stuff is delivered because people want it, and they do want it. Everyone has a choice between watching The Big Bang Theory versus watching, True Detective or something. In other words, a crappy show or a good show. Everyone has that choice, but 20 million people.
But they don't. Not everyone has that choice because, and I'm not saying this is the majority by any stretch of the imagination, but there are still lots of people that don't have cable TV, that aren't paying for what they're watching at home. You know what I mean? So they're whatever's coming out down the tube, that's what they're watching.
Really? You think a lot of people don't have cable? Don't have the internet?
Maybe not a lot, but there's still an
Sizable.
amount, right? There's still a sizable amount, I think.
But is that enough to explain the fact that Big Bang Theory gets 20 million viewers a week and Game of Thrones gets 9?
Well, that's all Nielsen ratings too, right?
So they might
Which
be
I don't
wrong.
understand how that works.
No, that's an excellent point. Nobody does.
Right, and that's like SoundScan at record stores and all that stuff. It's like it's
very dubious.
Yeah, it's like fake science.
Same with Sirius Radio. They report their ratings based on how many people have subscribed.
Right.
But millions of cars are sold every day with a free year subscription to Sirius.
Right.
And so those are counted as subscribers and therefore listeners to, say, Howard Stern's show, who claims he has 20 million listeners, I think, and Rush Limbaugh claims he has 30 million listeners. Nobody knows if that's true. Those numbers could be way off. And it's interesting because of how much those guys are getting paid. They're both getting paid $30 to $50 million a year, Stern and Limbaugh.
Right, and they're getting paid that by the numbers that they say that people listen to them.
Yeah. So we were talking after the show last week about believing in Santa. And did we believe in Santa when we were kids? And how old were we? And this is kind of interesting to me because when you guys asked me, I thought about it and I realized as far back as I can remember, I didn't believe in Santa, but I really wanted to. And I did things on purpose to help myself believe in Santa. This is very strange for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old child. I don't know if it's unusual, but it's not the way we usually think about child cognition. But here I am, like, listening at the top of the stairs, you know, and being on Christmas Eve and being very excited. And kind of, I would go, and then I would go into bed in my bedroom, and I could have snuck down, right, and caught my parents in the act, but I never did. I never tried to. And I was up there sort of just wanting to believe that Santa was coming, but not actually believing. But if you had asked me at the time, do you believe in Santa? I would have said yes. But looking back, I realized that I didn't. So, and this actually applies to other things like aesthetics. So the common sort of idea is that people like what they like in terms of like music, let's say.
Right.
They like what they like and they don't like what they don't like. And that's fine and that's sort of infallible. But I remember when I started listening to Skinny Puppy in college, I was kind of going on this track of listening to weirder and more underground, interesting psychedelic music. And I came across Skinny Puppy and I saw that there was a very strong underground following for this band. And I listened to a few songs, and I kind of liked a few, and then I listened to a few more, and I didn't like the sound of it. I didn't like it, but I wanted to like it. And so I listened more and more and more, and they became my favorite band. And they arguably still are to this day. I've been going back and listening to a lot of it. And so what is that about, Mark? What is it? Why isn't there a word for this of not liking something but wanting to like it? And then eventually coming to like it.
Well, I think that probably happens more than you think.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's generally in our society, if you don't like something, you're told that it's okay. You don't have to like it.
It's not for you.
It's not for you, whatever. So I think a lot of times it depends on, you know, what you're getting. Like I said, like if you only have basic TV, antenna TV, network TV, whatever, and you're getting programs and you don't really like any of them, you might try to like something on there and find something on there that you can, you know, at least enjoy. Because otherwise, like, the whole thing's just, oh, well, I'm not even going to watch it. And same with food. Like, if your mom makes certain dishes for you, you're going to try to like them, or eventually maybe you will.
My experience was that I wanted to like it because, and this was true with other experimental music, like noise music, like a band called Lightning Bolt and that German band Einstürzen Neubauten.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the guy that liked that music. And,
I get that
but
too.
It's more than just ego, though. Obviously,
I know that a lot of those bands like Einstürzen Neubauten and I don't know about Skinny Puppy, but at least for them, they were always like the band that like the intelligent people liked.
Right.
Like they were the band that like the
avant-garde,
philosophical, intelligent, thinking man's sort of music.
Yes.
So was that why you were trying to like it too?
Yes.
Because it was.
Yes, I wanted that.
You were developing this identity for yourself
of an intellectual who could appreciate things that other people couldn't.
Right.
But imagine my surprise when I delved into this music and really started to enjoy it. And found that there was something there that you don't hear at first. The Skinny Puppy, for example, I almost remember the moment I was listening on my headphones on the floor of a house in Kansas when I was there, living there, and it all of a sudden kicked in. Like I heard the depth of the programming and the different sounds and the music, and I was like, oh my God, this is deep. This is really well made and deeply produced and full of talent and melodic sort of. I don't know. I loved it, and then I found more and more like that. So, yes, it sort of began as a identity thing, as a sort of a ego trip, wanting to be that guy, but then finding out that it's in there. And another example is Aphex Twin, and now some of his music is very difficult, but now I consider him the greatest living composer of music. Period. Like. I feel such deep emotion in his melodies and things, and there's no singing or vocals in that at all.
Right.
So, yeah, it might have started as an ego trip, and then it ended as a discovery. And I've had this discussion with my girlfriend about art, like visual art, like paintings, for example. And so she said, she doesn't really generally like modern or abstract or art, the color blotches, paintings and stuff. And I asked her, don't you think, because someone did explain the paintings with the squares of color and the shapes, the classic modern art. Someone explained that to me once, and I don't remember it, but they did explain something about the color and the borders of the shapes and stuff, and that it was meaningful in some way. And I wasn't converted, but I do remember appreciating what they said and saying, oh, that's interesting. There is something there. More than just what, my 6-year-old could do that.
Right.
So, and she, and my girlfriend's, her point at the time, she might have changed her opinion on this, but was that if I don't like it, I don't like it. And no, I'm not going to learn to like it. I'm not going to find out that it's good. What I like is based on my immediate perception of that thing.
But I do think that you can learn to like something that you initially don't like. For me, like, and I was thinking about this because somebody was bringing it up too. Like, a lot of people think that in art, or have this attitude that for them to like the art or the music or the author or whoever, they have to have like similar beliefs, similar life philosophies or political beliefs,
right,
or whatever. And if like they don't, or the person has to be someone that they would like and want to hang out with.
Right.
Like if they were an asshole, they can't like their art.
Yeah. Well, that's...
And that's something for me I've never thought that. Like if I like someone's art, I like their art. Doesn't mean I like them. Doesn't mean I want to hang out with them.
There's a rule of thumb. I mean, never listen to an interview of an artist you really love.
Right.
Because it's only going to go downhill. No matter how great they are in the interview. They're not going to be the mythical figure that you associated with the beautiful art that they created.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So that was my one point. About Santa, I can remember, I don't know, I was a weird kid probably because my parents are both Christian, and they brought me up without really any filter. They didn't try to filter me from anything. So they would say like, yeah, Santa's, part of Christmas, and that's what a lot of people believe, but... we're the ones buying you the presents.
Oh, they just told you.
Yeah, but they would be like, yeah, they would have like, sometimes they'd dress up like him and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew it wasn't
Right.
But it wasn't pushed on me like that it wasn't real. It was just like matter of factly said.
Yeah.
It was the same way with swearing and learning how someone gets pregnant. Like I remember it's probably like 2 and I had heard, or 3, and I had heard someone say motherfucker. And like I said the word in front of my parents and they were like, do you know what that means? And I was like, no. And so they told me, like, well, a mother is, this. And so when you say motherfucker, it means someone that fucks a mother and blah, blah, blah. And I basically, my reply was, I pointed at my dad and like, you did that to her?
That's pretty good.
And then same with Santa, like or anything, Santa, Easter Bunny. It was never like a big issue. And I was probably the first kid on the block that knew how you get pregnant. Like I remember all my other friends would be like, oh, and the mom eats a watermelon and swallows a watermelon seed, and then the baby's in their stomach. And I'm like, no, that's not how it happens.
There was a good joke. I can't remember which comedian. He said his kid asked him, where do babies come from? And he said, the stork brings them. And the kid goes, well, where does the stork get the baby? And he goes, he gets fucked by another stork.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But then I do remember when I was still a kid, I was probably like 10 or 11, some other nephews and nieces of mine, we were all together at Christmas. And one family like had taught their kids that Santa was real. And the other family hadn't. They had like told them from the get-go that, Santa wasn't real. So these kids are like 5, 6. And the one boy and girl are telling the other girl, 2 girls and 2 boys, that Santa doesn't exist.
Right.
And like, they came running up, Mom! They're saying that Santa doesn't exist, Mom. And there was a big like argument at Christmas, like you teach your kids what, like, and then
God.
like, well, you keep your kids away from my kids, and it was just.
Well, yeah, I mean, just imagine the kids, because neither of us were like this, but imagine the kids that really believed, up to 6, 7, 8 years old, that this guy existed. It would require an elaborate, convincing setup by the parents.
Right.
The parents would really have to push it, like teaching that Jesus, Christianity. They would have to teach it on the same level of that. And really, right, are they the same? Is it the same thing to teach a child that Santa exists as to teach them that Jesus was the Son of God? Is it the exact same thing? Is there any difference between those two?
Well, some might say that it's more harmful to teach your kid that Jesus was the Son of God, because then you get all that
sin.
Yeah, all the other rigmarole that comes with it, sin, and
hell.
Saying, oh well, and the Bible teaches that homosexual. I mean, no one's saying Santa doesn't believe in gay marriage. Santa hates homosexuals.
In other words, it's taught with a certain levity, with a certain not serious tone.
Right. So I mean, in some ways, you could say that's it's better being taught about Santa than Jesus. But did you read the thing about Neil deGrasse saying about the Scientologists and how he doesn't understand why Scientology is supposedly a cult, and not a religion?
Right. No, I didn't, but I'm assuming he's saying that it's the same as all the other.
Right.
religions.
He's saying it's the same. Because it seems to him like the only thing that is the difference is time. Like one religion is thousands of years old.
Right.
The other religion is pretty new, 50, 60, whatever years old. But then response, it was someone who I didn't know was in this article that I was reading. Their response was that the reason that Scientology is a cult and not a religion is because there's brainwashing involved in a cult.
Right.
There's not. But I mean, I guess you could sort of say that there's brainwashing involved in religions.
Well,
especially one that you've been brought up in as a child.
So with the Scientologists, you have the machine, the e-meter or whatever, and they sit you down and interview you, and you bring up past painful things from your past, and they record it, and they have them. That's why Travolta is still in there, because he can never leave, because he's a homosexual man. And they have all of the proof of that.
Right.
And Tom Cruise as well, probably.
Right.
Or other things that they did that can never come out. But so that's definitely a brainwashing procedure. I mean, especially since they're bringing out all this pain. Now, Catholics have confession, right?
Right, but is the priest recording it and then using it against you later, or saying, "Hey, blah blah blah"?
No,
you better put something in the tithing box, because right. So, and then the other point that they had made was that with religions, what you're worshiping is either, or your object of worship is either someone that's dead or something that you can't physically manifest. So, this idea.
L. Ron Hubbard is dead.
Well,
but they don't worship him, right?
Right.
They worship the Xenu or something.
Yeah, Xenu or whatever. So I guess Scientology wasn't quite on that, but then they were talking about like the Manson cult, Jim Jones, the Hale Bop meteor dude, how all those things weren't really religions. Heaven's Gate were more cults, as because the people had this person that was alive that they were following and worshipped.
I would add, I agree with that response to Neil. Was it Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Was the one who said he didn't understand why Scientology isn't a religion, it's considered a cult.
He's saying it's the same as any other. And Bill Burr said that too on his podcast. He's like, yeah, watch that. Or was it Stanhope? One of them said, I watched that movie, and yeah, it's really good. But you have to, you better conclude with it's the same as all the other religions. So I actually was thinking about this as well. And my response, I add on to what you were saying, is that all of Western culture today is a result of Christianity. It's a historical result. 2,000 years of Christianity have got us to where our values are today, whether you see it or not. For example, we champion the underdog in this culture, right? The weak, we do like to help the weak and bring them up, and the success story of the outcast or the bastard child who comes up and succeeds is an American thing. And compassion too is a big part of our culture. Western culture is, in a way, at least somewhat liberal in helping those who need help. This is a Christian idea, and if you went back to Rome, pre-Christian Rome, you would not have encountered these cultural values at all. They were I don't want to use loaded words, but in a way they were more vicious. They were less compassionate. And this whole, end the suffering of the weak idea is a Christian value. And liberalism today is very Christian. It's just that most of them have abandoned the religious aspect of it.
Right.
But liberalism itself is extremely Christian oriented. It's turn the other cheek, don't go to war, love thy neighbor. These are all liberal values. Everyone gets a piece of the pie. Help the poor, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And liberals do not realize that. So all of these new atheists, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Hitchens and Ricky Gervais and Darren Brown, all these guys that I really appreciate things they've done, but they don't realize the impact that Christianity has had. And so to get back to the point, Scientology is different from Christianity in that to teach a child Christianity, at least to teach them what it's about and not to indoctrinate them, is important. It's a part of our cultural heritage, 2,000 years of cultural heritage. So it's different in that way. And Scientology and Mormonism are much less a part of who we are as a people. They didn't contribute to medieval Europe and all of these elements that led to where we are today.
Right. You want to talk about the 111 deaths of people by cops last month?
Oh, my God. A shocking statistic.
Yeah.
Okay. In March, in the U.S., the police killed 111 Americans, which is more than the British police have killed since the year 1900. So in March, U.S. police killed more people than UK police killed in 115 years.
And I think it was almost double. I think the UK number was 56. I think they said that the number of people killed by cops in the UK was 56
in that
since 1900.
Yeah. I mean, that is shocking. Now, part of that has to be that Americans are armed.
Well, yeah. I'm sure that number 111. Sure, in that number is included criminals who like were in a shootout with cops.
Definitely, a lot of.
So it's not. We're not saying 111 innocent, unarmed Americans.
Right.
But still, it is.
But a
shocking.
lot of them were unarmed.
Well, right, and I mean, just in 1 month, they killed more people than in 115 years
in the United Kingdom.
Right.
I mean, there's just the same percentage of psychopaths and violent people in Britain as there are here. So why don't they kill them? Why don't the UK cops kill these people? They find other ways.
Right.
They find other ways to intervene and arrest these people.
Yeah, and that just goes back to my whole point about when people talk about gun control and talking about taking guns away because of violence and deaths. It's like, well, why don't we ever talk about gun control for the cops? Like in the UK, cops don't carry guns.
Right.
So maybe in this country, cops shouldn't carry guns because they've obviously shown that they kind of can't really handle it.
Well, I understand your suggestion, but on the other hand, there's more guns in America than there are people.
No, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to take away guns,
if
you're going to have gun control. No, take them from the police, take them from the citizens too. If you're going to take away guns, take them away from everybody.
Okay, so are you advocating?
No, I'm not. I'm not. But I'm just saying. But the people who want to take guns away from the citizens never talk about taking guns away from the cops as well.
Yeah. Because the same rule applies. The more, if you have a gun on you or in your house, you're this % more likely to use it and kill someone,
right?
Accidentally or intentionally. But yeah, those police, man, you watch videos of police interactions in Scotland and England, and it's just they're usually long arguments with a lot of like funny wisecracks and insults, and it never gets to violence.
Right.
I've seen a lot of these shows. There was a crazy lady who was supposedly possessed and running out in traffic, and the police were just chasing her and grabbing her and trying to calm her down and like pleading with her. And there's a lot of knife crime over there too. Right? You just tase them, I guess, or you hit them with the nightstick in the knee, and then you end it right there. And that's another reason that police should. I know it's expensive, but police should learn self-defense, hand-to-hand combat. And they should learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu, in other words, because it's the gentle way. You choke the guy out or you break his arm, but you don't kill him.
Well, except for they have killed some people in chokeholds.
Yeah, that chokehold with Eric Garner was a piece of junk, though. It was
no, right. I'm sure he was not trained. He didn't know how to apply.
Well, he learned something, but it was like a wrestling hold, and he had the forearm across the guy's trachea. Now, a rear naked choke. The guy who's doing the choking, his elbow is directly under the chin of the opponent. And there's that space there where your trachea is. So the forearm cuts off the carotid on this side, and the bicep cuts off the carotid on this side, and you lose blood to the brain, and you pass out harmlessly. No permanent damage.
Right.
You don't stop the guy from breathing. The guy can breathe the whole time. He just 5 seconds without blood, and you go unconscious.
Right.
So, he was saying, I can't breathe. Obviously, that guy was cutting off his windpipe.
Right. And then that goes to, the whole reason that the cop was doing that to him was he was selling cigarettes.
Right. Loose cigarettes.
Yeah, loose. He would go buy cartons and then sell them outside this store just individually. And the cops had, I don't know if they had arrested him before, but they had at least hassled him about it and made him go away. And this day he was like, you know what, you guys keep hassling me all the time. It's not right, blah, blah, blah.
Sick of it. This ends today.
Yeah. And
so why are Americans so violent?
Well, if anything, I guess I think our society accepts and says that it's okay to be rebellious. Right. It's okay to fight against stuff and
authority,
fight against authority, and our whole. We've always, that's the start of our country, was fighting against the government that it was under, and then the whole, Western expansion, taking the land away from the people who were there, and even fighting amongst each other, and so that's how you would settle an argument, is go out and shoot it out.
Well, when Brian comes back, of course, he's a huge gun advocate, and actually all three of us are gun advocates. But I want to ask him, where's the well-regulated militia referenced in the Second Amendment?
Well, I guess that is that considered the National Guard?
Well, yeah, but it's comes with the right to bear arms.
No, right.
They mention it in the same breath. In other words, if you have a gun, you should be part of the militia.
Well, remember they were trying to start militias like the whole Minutemen and stuff back in the 90s.
Yeah,
is that when it was
Michigan
happening?
militia.
Yeah, and the media was just
These guys
want
are
to talk
crazy.
about how these crazy gun nuts were running around in the woods and trying to kill Mexicans or I don't know who.
Early American history, late 1700s, early 1800s, you had a big debate about should we have a standing army. And, the super libertarian early Americans, small government people, especially the South, they were saying, no, you can't have a standing army. The standing army of a country immediately turns into the iron fist of the government to control the people. Whereas if you have state militias that can be, that you can combine during wartime if need be into an army, that's better. But the Federalists won out, and I have to say I'm probably on the side of the Federalists. You never would have had the economic insanity that is America, the greatest, the richest country of all time. You never would have had that without centralization, and that's what the Federalists wanted. They wanted a strong president, central government, less rights for the states, and that argument's still boiling today.
Right.
So they ended up getting a standing army, and I don't think you can say that it's been used to oppress the people yet, but it has been used to prosecute countless wars that most people generally don't support when they start. They have to do public relations campaigns to get the people to support the war.
Right. And most of those wars that we fought, even if they were something that we didn't want to do, looking back on it now, those wars are why we have the standard of living that we have. And
Exactly.
everything that's happened in this country, all of our politics has come to what we have today and
Right.
why we are able to live the way we do. Now, that's kind of coming to an end because of the policies that we've been doing recently and all the money we've been spending and all the corporate interests that we've been selling out to. But then that, too, will benefit people in some ways because, people that complain about Mexicans coming over here and stealing our jobs. Well, when we are at the same level as Mexico, nobody's going to be coming over here to take your job.
Right.
Because they can stay in their own country and work the same kind of crappy job.
Right.
So I guess racists at least will be happy.
If the economy collapses.
Right. And there's no more Mexicans coming over or Cubans sailing over on a raft or
It's really quite the moral conundrum or crisis when you think about American history and the genocide of the Indians, slavery, and what we have today.
Right.
It tells me that nobody should really be completely a liberal or completely a conservative because you can't just. There's something not wise about looking at the past and rejecting it. The very past that led to what you have today. So in other words, the academic freedom of feminists and liberals today was all made possible by the horrors of chattel slavery and Indian massacre. And Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche's response to that is you always say yes to the past. You affirm the past because it made you what you are today. And no one really has the right to say, no, I wish it hadn't been like that, and I wish we were still just, still in Europe, or if I wish I was just a Native American that was still roaming the plains. Well, maybe you think you wish that, but you don't really have the right to say that you would like that more, or.
Well, you have the right to say it, but whether you're correct or not, in thinking, and this is my thing about that too is. So you can say, oh, the U.S. government is so terrible for wiping out the Indians and having slavery, and I would agree with you on all those points. But to say it like if the U.S. government hadn't done it, it would not be in existence. It would not have been a reality.
Right.
I'm sorry, Native Americans, before white man ever came here, were fighting amongst each other.
Right.
They were killing each other and stealing land, or stealing, not land, but stealing things, or, people, or I don't know, whatever. Before the U.S. was even a country, England and Spain and France, they were all involved in the slave trade. Another friend of mine posted something on Facebook about there was I forget who the Muslim was. He was some professor somewhere, and he basically being interviewed, I think, on German TV or somewhere, and someone asked him about equating Muslims with terrorists, and he basically said, "Well, why? I don't understand why you always equate Muslims with terrorists when Christians did this and Christians
World
did
War
this,
I, World War II, Vietnam."
And he mentioned slavery, which that was out of the whole thing. That's my one thing was like, really? You're going to mention slavery? Because Muslims, for the most part, were the people selling the slaves from Africa to the U.S.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. The Ottoman Empire, I know one or two of the big Muslim empires didn't have slavery, but others of them did.
I don't know if they had them in their own country.
Right, but you say they were facilitating the slave trade.
They were going to Africa, and I'm not saying that they were even working as some sort of governmental agency, or these are could be just private people.
Yeah,
but they were definitely Muslim. In the one slaver city, I forget what it's in, the Spielberg movie.
12 Years a Slave.
No, the other one, Amistad.
Oh,
the one slaver city was run by Muslims, but like my whole point about that was everyone like wants to blame something. You know what I mean? Everyone wants a group and say, "Oh, well, if this group just wouldn't have done this, then that wouldn't have existed."
Right, and of course there were Africans involved in the slave trade as well.
Yeah, no, Africans were.
They didn't just land on the shores and grab people.
They were
allied with tribes,
right.
And those tribes would go to war and take
get
slaves.
Right, kidnap people from other tribes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there has to be some way of looking back on history and, I don't know, affirming it in a way that acknowledges the horror of some of these deeds and I guess learns from it. But you can't turn your back and say, I'm a white man, I'm a white woman, and I reject all these horrible things that happen because I'm a liberal. You have to, that was part of you.
And you need to look at it and examine it and acknowledge the horrific things that happened and say, we are going to learn from the past and not repeat these things because we understand that, they weren't good. We don't have to do them anymore. But at the same time, the people that want to look at that and just scream foul and scream how terrible it was, the reason they can is because of what happened, like you said. The reason that people can devote time to thinking about feminism or thinking about racism or thinking about any of those things is because of the standard of living they have now.
Right.
And they're not working in a sweatshop. They're not.
Those things would be the first to go in an economic collapse. The feminism department of the university would be the first thing to disappear because it's on the top of that luxury pyramid. Right.
And some of what's so ridiculous about the feminism stuff today, a friend of mine, a woman, I guess, had been reading a bunch of stuff about Game of Thrones, and I guess it's a big thing now for feminists to talk about Game of Thrones and Song of Fire and Ice as being sexist, and because somehow they show women in a bad light.
Well, we're gonna have to look up the exact argument that they're making, and we can look at it and analyze it.
Right. No, well, basically, they're saying that there's these characters, female characters, that are shown to be either stupid or greedy or blah blah blah, and now that's like anti-woman. If you show a woman to be anything other than just nice and good, it seems to be their argument.
Well, there's a I've invited a esteemed professor from the U of A, the Gender Studies Department, to be on the show, and I have not received a reply from her. But I do want, and some of the listeners are calling for some female voices on this show for good reason. So I'm gonna, but the three females I've invited have all declined. But I'm going to keep pursuing and trying to get someone on here to give us that side of things, to give us that perspective, because I have a lot of questions about feminism, and it's a very amorphous topic. People don't really know what it is. For example, if you ask the general public, are you a feminist? You get a small percentage saying yes. You get about 35% or something like that. But if you then redefine it as, well, all it means is equal rights for women under the law, then you get like 65, 75, 85% of people saying, oh yeah, if that's what it means, then I'm a feminist. But of course, that isn't what it means. It carries a lot of other things with it, like the consent law in California, or the idea of patriarchal hegemony, and all these complex ideas that feminists explore. So I want someone on here who can defend those ideas and answer a lot of the questions that I have, but we need a female voice to step up and accept that invitation, so I'm looking forward to that. Guys, next week we have a good friend of mine, not necessarily going to use his name. He might want to stay anonymous. He is a longtime advocate and member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to talk about addiction, 12-step programs, some recent research refuting their usefulness, and it's going to be a really interesting discussion. I have a lot of questions and opinions, of course, about addiction and drug use, and so it should be good. Next Sunday, that's going to happen. And we should have Brian Richter back on the mic, the stowaway guest. One other thing, guys, your homework, please, if you're listening to this, and I know only 50 or 60 people right now are listening to the show, just Facebook, send me a question, or send it to Mark too, even though he's impossible to look up on Facebook because his name is in Arabic or Farsi or something. But send me a question or a comment. It can be funny, it can be crazy, it can be serious, it can be angry. And I will read it verbatim and on the air, and everyone will discuss it. So please do that. Please get involved, and thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace out.